a daily program powered by the Truth Network.
This is kind of a great thing, and I'll tell you why.
Where pop culture, current events, and theology all come together.
Speak your mind.
And now, here's today's Truth Talk Live host.
What a week we have in front of us. It is the celebration of our 250th anniversary of the 4th of July, and obviously that's the date is coming up this Saturday. How exciting is that? And so we have a neat question. I really like this question today. We would love for you to call in and answer. Like, what verse comes to your heart when you think about this anniversary, 250 years that God built our nation on his word? What verse do you think speaks to that? 866-348-7884, 866-348-7884. And when you're blessed enough to hang out with Dr. Date the Word Carson, he has like 100 because he's been studying a book, 100 Bible verses that made America. And so, you know, I love the history that's in there. I love what God has built on his word. But still, it's so practical, right? Because it's something that we walk with every day. And so what are you walking with? 866-348-7884. 866-348-7884. When you think about this 250th anniversary, what Bible verse just jumps out as something that you think was practical as much in 1640 as it is today? So, Doc, you got some of those, and they were in the real King Jimmy, and was King James out by then?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, 1611.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He'd been around for
a couple decades, couple centuries. Well, a happy 4th of July. It's the last day of June when we're doing this show. But as we look to the 4th of July, I came across a book, 100 Bible Verses That Made America by Robert Morgan. I cannot recommend a book more right now, especially as we come to this 250th. It's been so exciting for me, thrilling to read these different verses. And, I would hope some listener right now is thinking, I'm going to call, but I'm going to end up giving their verse away. But when we think about the 4th of July, we always think about liberty. We think about the Liberty Bell. So one of those most important verses of American history is Leviticus 25:10. And you shall consecrate the 5th year and proclaim liberty throughout all the land to all its inhabitants. And that's on the Liberty Bell. If you go to Philadelphia, if you ever buy a replica of it, you're going to get this idea. You're going to get this verse, Leviticus 25:10. My producer, Nick,
he's right here with us. He understands that the ramifications of that is why there are no knock-knock jokes about the 4th of July, right, Nick? You know.
Nick, there are
there is not one single 4th of July knock-knock joke, is there? And you know why.
Nick?
You've heard me say it more than once.
Nick. Because
freedom rings. I'm sorry.
And there you have it, listeners.
I can't resist when I think of that. It's just anyway, no. I mean, it's amazing and so beautiful, right?
Yeah.
That they, the first beatitude is, blessed are those, right, that are poor in spirit. Now, can you imagine how poor in spirit they were?
Yep.
That the British, when they quartered their soldiers, I don't think we have a grip of a lot of us that didn't take history in college would know that meant that the British would bring these young men into your house that would, unfortunately, cause trouble with your teenage daughter,
yes.
et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
some real scary stuff that talk about making me poor in spirit. If I had to worry about soldiers coming into my house to mess with my kids in any way, shape, or form, that the taxation, there's other things, obviously.
Representation, but yeah, they would just take over. And there was a reason to have this war. And Romans 13:1 is one of the major verses of our founding, because in Romans 13:1 it says, "Let every soul be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist are appointed by God," which would lead some people to believe that meant that you had to stay in subjection to the king. Well, there had to be a reason for them to, quote, rebel. And Thomas Mayhew preached a message on Romans 13:1, and it says, when the magistrate is wicked, the lower magistrate can throw off the top magistrate. And that's why when you read the Declaration of Independence, quite frankly, it's boring. It has some great openings.
Not for you, Doc.
No,
everybody else on the planet.
No. Even for me, I'm like, are you kidding me? And I read it every year. This year, I'm so excited. I'm going to be at Williamsburg. They got a reenactor for Thomas Jefferson. He's not coming back from the grave. I messed up today and said Thomas Jefferson's going to be back, and he's not going to be back. But,
he's back.
But the reenactor is going to read the Declaration of Independence from the Capitol there at Williamsburg. I'm looking so forward to that, 9:30 on Saturday morning. That's what I'm going to be doing, listening to him. But it's boring because they're laying out all these just causes of what this King George III, has done that gives them the right to say, we deserve our own government. And then they pledge their lives and their fortunes and their future and signed that document.
So when you're thinking about this, the 4th of July and the verses that you've maybe heard over the years that were involved in, again, these people were poor and they were looking for God. And the best way I know to look for him, right, is in his neighborhood, the Bible.
Yes.
Hey, what do you think? 866-348-7884. What verse rings your Liberty Bell? 866-348-7884, 866-34-Truth. If you're digitally gifted, you could do it that way. You would bless us, right? Just, because again, it's one thing to have a verse. It's another thing to actually have it down inside of you where you are, it affects your life. It affects how you feel, we were, as we were preparing for the show, going through the Star-Spangled Banner, right? And little did I know that our national motto was in one of the stanzas that we don't sing.
Yes.
And so, if you happen to know the national motto, if it happens to be in the Star-Spangled Banner, you call us, 866, because I didn't know it, but when I saw this, I went, oh, yeah, I kind of do, 866-348-7884, and it's right there in the Star-Spangled Banner.
Yeah.
I was not aware of that.
And it started them being put on all kind of buildings, and I'm going to leave it at that, but there is a hint. If they don't know, we can point them after the break.
All right. 866-348-7884. What verses? I'll just throw this one out there. There's some verses that say why we have a 3-branch form of government.
Yes.
Do you know where those are? 866-348-7884. We'll look forward to your calls when we come back.
You're listening to the Truth Network and truthnetwork.com.
one of the largest 4th of July celebrations in our lifetime. You know, some of us were around when we celebrated our 200th anniversary, but here we got now, 250.
Stu said something, you were around for the 150th. Is that true, Rafi?
The 100th would have been, 150th would have been the 1926. Yeah, not quite.
Not quite.
Not quite. Did he actually say that? That's funny. Well, I was there for the 200,
yes,
and
1976.
That's funny, absolutely funny. So, as we are thinking about this, what Bible verses do you feel like impacted the government that maybe impact you now? That impacted our forefounders, the Pilgrims, or the Patriots at the Revolution, or maybe the War of 1812, because certainly Francis Scott Key got there. But it's a long history,
yes,
of 250 years of believers, that made all kinds of sacrifices for us through, the World War I and World War II. I mean, I've heard, I guess based on the people I did know from the 20s, including my own parents, that some of the sacrifices that they made in World War I were really remarkable, that we really don't have a sense of, that, they didn't really have an idea of why in the world we got to go over to Europe and fight this war. And there was a draft, and it was a difficult thing, especially here in North Carolina, as I've heard from many Patriots. But what does all that stir up in your heart? 866-348-7884. Your Bible verse that you can cling to as something that is really cool God's given you recently, or maybe for years, about this anniversary. So, Doc, what's another biggie?
Well, I think, as I've read from Robert Morgan, I didn't realize this, of how much one verse seems to be sewn into the fabric of all of our thinking. And it's Micah 6:8. And I never realized that. And I love Micah 6:8. And Micah 6:8 says, "He has shown you, O man, what is good."
Did you use that for the 8th of June?
I did.
Okay.
Well, I also have Isaiah 6:8. So I have two great ones. If your birthday's on the 8th of June, you've got two great verses.
I'm sorry, I didn't. Go ahead and read it again.
He has shown you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? And then it says this, but to, and here we go, but to do justly. Think of us as a nation. Justice. Then to love mercy. Has there ever been as generous, as compassionate of a nation? Yes, we fought in world wars, destroy countries, and then go back and build them.
Right.
The compassion that is seen with the elderly, the compassion that is seen with those that are poor and needy. We reach out. There's a component of doing justice and mercy, and then he says, and to walk humbly with your God. That's what God requires. And Robert Morgan brings out how that one verse from the very beginning, all the way back when we get into the 1600s, the first permanent English settlement was in 1607 in Jamestown. And as things begin to progress, you got Mayflower coming over with the Pilgrims there in 1619. But little by little, there's this idea, we're going to be like Micah 6:8. So one of the most important verses that we still need to know today is to love justice, love mercy, and to walk
I think when you think about that, mercy fits into even, how many wars did we go into in order to bail somebody out that was in a big-time problem, i.e. Israel recently, right? Yeah. And I had an interview with a rabbi yesterday, and he was speaking of what it was for the people of Israel to feel like somebody had their back.
That's right.
And how important that is.
How many times did we hear that this past December?
Right.
that there were times when Israel wondered, is anybody out there that cares about us after the events of October the 7th, 2023? Wow.
Yeah, and so that loving mercy part does fit into, so much of our national, and sometimes it leads you into fighting to help people that can't protect themselves.
Dr. Morgan brought out Ruth 1:16 as one of the great verses, because Ruth says to Naomi, I'm going to stick with you. Wherever you go, I'm going to go. I'm going to be right there. That's the verse that Franklin Roosevelt quoted to Winston Churchill as World War II was starting to ramp up. Winston, we've got your back. And he quoted Ruth 1:16 to him.
Really?
Yeah. Isn't that awesome?
That is awesome.
And I did a sermon one time, and I didn't have that illustration. I wish I did, but who's got your back? And Ruth says, I've got your back. I'm right here. And America that's been part of I call it our DNA. We have people's back.
Especially the underdog, right?
Yes.
Time and again.
Yes. When we think about, I mentioned the Mayflower, the Pilgrims. Shortly after they had gotten settled, a guy named John Winthrop is going to preach a message, and he preaches a dream of America, this country. Matthew 5:14, you are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Well, Ronald Reagan came along in the 80s, and he reinvigorated, I won't say it that way.
Yeah, he did.
The American spirit, and he went back to that verse, Matthew 5:14, America to be a light to the world.
1,000 points of light or something like that.
Well, that was Bush.
Okay.
With 1,000 points of light.
I knew there was some light involved.
Yes.
That's why you got to call to keep me out of trouble. 866-348-7884. 866-348-7884. So there isn't 1,000 points of light.
Yes, there is, but that was George H. Bush.
No, I mean there isn't a verse.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to process that one, but I know there's a verse, for you that you. And it's a cool thing. My youngest daughter was born on the 4th of July.
Wow.
And I can remember my wife wanting to have her be born on the 4th of July. And we went to a rodeo the night before, on the 3rd of July. And she was walking up and down the bleachers back and forth trying to make sure that the baby came. And sure enough, Mariah did. And so we immediately crowned her Miss Independence.
and then somebody wrote a song, Born on the 4th of July.
Right.
She got her own song.
Anyway, I know it means something that is down in the fabric of all, patriots. And so I would love to know how that fits in with you and your view of Scripture. 866-348-7884, 866-34-TRUTH. Of course, 2 Chronicles 7:14 for me.
Yeah.
If somebody would say, Robbie, if you ask me that question, it's quoted every National Day of Prayer. But I did not realize until we were talking here a little while ago, it was very important in the actual inauguration process of several presidents.
Yes. Dwight Eisenhower had his Bible open, and Ronald Reagan, 2 Chronicles 7:14. And I bet our listeners know what that is, but we're going to have to go to a break, Robbie.
Oh, that's a good thing. And you can call in with it, 866, and nobody's called in with our national motto. I'm shocked. 866-348-7884, 866-34-TRUTH. What's coming to your mind? What's the national motto?
You're listening to the Truth Network and truthnetwork.com.
It is a gigantic 250th anniversary headed our way in just a few days. This is the end of June today, and tomorrow we head into this July celebration, 250 years since the 4th of July, 1776. And, you know, it was built clearly on the Bible, and we love to think about that. We love to see how these verses still apply to us in the fabric of our day-to-day lives today. How does that work out in yours? 866, we would love to hear your take on it. Or if you happen to know the national motto, since nobody's called in on that one, 866-348-7884, 866-348.
Can I give them a hint?
7884, no hints. So we got, well, you can give them a hint on what 2 Chronicles 7:14 says.
Well, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves, that takes us back to Micah 6:8, doesn't it?
Yes.
And pray and seek my face, turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and heal their land. If my people, and I think I may have, after John 3:16, I think 2 Chronicles 7:14 has been preached on quite a bit in this nation, because while it's a verse that's for Israel, of Solomon, it has personal application for us, and what a matter of fact, I write on this in my Date the Word devotional for 7:14, the recipe for revival, a personal recipe, and you got to humble yourself. And the reason so many of us find ourselves in trouble with God is because we're proud, we're prideful, and God resist. For you football guys out there, the word resist is he stiff arms the proud. You're just not going to make it, Robbie. I think you had a statement about that. You're not going to make it if you are not humble.
Yeah, and then pray, right?
Yeah.
That humility is leading you to, wow, I need some answers, and guess who's got them?
Yeah.
And seek my face. That's
not the hand. Seek the face. I want to know you, God.
Yeah.
And then my desires get turned to be his desires. What does he want?
That's beautiful. Yeah. Amazing idea. And so we've got Buxman.
Yes.
Maybe has our answer. Who knows? Your answer would be great. 866-348-7884. Buxman, what are you thinking?
Oh, hello. Happy 4th of July week, Truth Talk Live, my dear brother.
Yes, it is. It's so good to hear from you. It sounds like the Bucksmobile is cruising.
It is. Hey, Christian car guy, how can I put a bump when that fell off a couple miles ago?
Oh, no.
Yeah, it got real loud, guys, but at least my neighbors hear me when I'm coming and going. So,
there you go.
They know to get out of the way.
I know Midas has a lifetime warranty. There you go.
Oh, does a 2004 Civic have a lifetime warranty?
If it had a Midas muffler on it, it does.
Oh, really? No, it was the original.
Oh.
Yeah, it was the original.
But anyway, what are you thinking about our 250th anniversary? Or maybe you got the national motto for it.
Well, I was racking my brain, Robbie, on the national motto. I don't want to take a stab at it because I know there's somebody out there in True Talk Live land that probably knows it. I know what our Ohio State motto is, which is kind of cool. And that is, believe it or not, with God, all things are possible.
Really?
Ohioans doesn't know that. Yeah.
Did you know that, Doc? You lived in Ohio, didn't you, at one point?
I thought it was bow down to the Buckeyes. Bow down to the Buckeyes. No, that is great that in Ohio they've always had the Philippians 4:13 with God. Yes. All things are possible. Yeah.
But the tragic part is, Dr. Carson, is not many Ohioans know that. And,
well, we're forgetting our history.
That's what I was going to bring up, gentlemen. 250 years. Okay, and when I was in school, now I went to Christian school until the 3rd grade, but then starting in the 4th grade, I had to go to public school. But I remember in the Christian school, gentlemen, that we were taught all kinds of American history, which is what made me fall in love with history as a person, as a young man, and then as an old man like I am. And I just remember, guys, learning about the Minutemen, Paul Revere's ride, the Battle of Bunker Hill, in little school. I mean, third grade or younger. So I want to say it was third grade. And when I asked my two children about those very topics that I just named, because they've been in public school all their life, they don't know what I'm talking about, John.
Yeah, we need that Andy Griffith episode where he taught them all about the shot that was heard round the world.
Yeah, really cool. My father lived in that area around Boston and Lexington. He lived in Lexington, actually. And so, that was huge in my family. Like, he was going to take us, where Paul Revere's place is. We went to all those places. Wow. I can't imagine that they don't teach that.
Yeah.
Well, at least here, I mean, and I've quizzed my kids, and with all of the indoctrination that's gone into public schools, gentlemen, I've been to my kids' school board so many times that they know the name of my beer. So the board does. So, and at a time there, we were dealing with, the infiltration of the 1619 project.
Yes.
Was being introduced. Remember that, Dr.
Oh, yes.
Critical race theory.
And that's why we have to get back to the 1776.
Right. They don't teach 1776. They teach 1619 in public school, and I had to rail against it in my kids' school board meeting and say, "Hey, I'm not for this being taught. It's not a proven theory. There's no backup. I'm Generation X." Now, I never heard of that, and I've been to both public and private schools, so I can't imagine this as being real foundational American history, of which I always scholared in through school, all the way from junior high, elementary to high school. I always made A's and B's in history because of my love for history and American history. And so I just want to say, in our 250 years, I'm hoping that our next generation knows what happened in these past 250 years, or if it's just, old guys like me, Generation X and older, that were taught, what the Boston Massacre is, the Stamp Act,
the real Tea Party.
The real Tea Party, Doc Carson. This was taught to me in school. And I would just ask, and maybe there's some listeners out there that are in the public school teaching field, are they teaching these historical facts in today's public school? And that would be my thought, Robbie, about our topic today on Truth Talk.
Absolutely beautiful. Yes, thank you, Buxman. That's awesome. That's good stuff.
You are so welcome. And I'm going to listen in case there's somebody out there listening that can call in.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
The national motto.
Great.
All right. And which I learned,
awesome.
Philippians 4:13
guys.
is Ohio. God bless, man. Thank you, Buxman.
It sure is. God bless, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye. 866, maybe your state's motto has a Bible verse in it, too. 866-348-7884, 866-34-TRUTH. And there's a hint for you that our national motto may mention God in it, just saying, but it's not a Bible verse.
It's not a Bible, but
it is instrumental in the fabric of.
If they watch Law and Order, they'll see it in the courtroom. It's right there. Every episode.
866-348-7884, 866-34-TRUTH. If you got that Bible verse or some thoughts along these lines, and I love the history that he is bringing out, because it was so important what we learned as children as to the desperate plight of those people that after they had this Declaration of Independence, I mean, they were taking on the greatest nation in the world, and with God's help. That's the biggest point of it all. It's that, oh my goodness, look what you can do with God, And if you're now the greatest nation in the world, can you imagine if you actually did humble yourself, sought his face, the things that would be possible to bringing, God into the world.
And you were mentioning about they needed God's help. And you think back again, going into this week, I can't help but recommend to you, make sure you watch A Great Awakening.
Oh, yeah.
Because George Whitefield, before George Washington, when it comes to the spiritual heritage of this country, he's the spiritual father. And he had one message, and again, verses that made America, John 3:7, you must be born again. And he preached it where over 80% of Americans at that time, he would die at 1770, but up until that point, when he's preaching, over 80% of Americans would hear him preach at least one time. And his number one message was, you must be born again. And so as this nation, quote, was born, people were being born again. And
as we saw through that movie, one of the people that needed to be born again was Benjamin Franklin himself. Yeah. And as a result of his faith, right, of Benjamin Franklin's faith, right, then he quoted
Psalms 127:1, unless the Lord builds the house, they that labor in vain. And he quoted that as they were now trying to get the Constitution to be framed up. And you mentioned that, Robbie, that the Constitution has a connection to Scripture.
It does. Beautiful. Wonderful.
I wonder what verse.
Yeah, if you know that one.
Oh,
I'll tell you, it's not in the Psalms. 866-348-7884. 866-348-7884. And I do think that that's absolutely amazing to me, and something I wish I'd have known when I was a lot younger, and they did not teach that in school, that the basis of our government, the fact that we have a judicial branch and we have, well, you can tell a branch. We have the president, we have the Congress, and we have the
executive, legislature, and judicial.
See,
and it's Isaiah 33:22, and I'll read it when we come back.
All right.
But that's it's unreal. Isaiah 33:22. You're going to want to mark this one in your Bible.
It is critical, right? That they understood these things that actually form this country. 866-348-7884. We'll be right back.
Truth Talk Live.
You're listening to the Truth Network and truthnetwork.com.
The 4th of July week. How exciting is that? The biggest one at least in 50 years, right?
Well, it's bigger than the 200 from what I recall. I'm telling you.
It seems huge. To be, again, I'm seeing it from a different light than I saw it 50 years ago. And for certainly a different age. I was not a broadcaster at that point in time, but boy, there's been a lot of excitement about the founding of our country, what went into that. I see a resurgence in the understanding of American history from a Christian perspective, and I think that has been well, disseminated in recent times. I certainly learned tons about it myself. One of which we were just talking about was the fact that here we have this three-form branch of government, as Doc so well pointed out, it's judicial. What is it? Congressional and president? Executive, legislative, and executive. Okay, it's a good thing I wasn't taking a test. I would have been there. But anyway,
the three branches,
and it comes right out of Isaiah.
Isaiah 33:22. For the Lord is our judge, the Lord is our lawgiver, and the Lord is our king. He will save us. And so the idea that is brought in that we'll have a executive branch, the president, we'll have the legislative, which then is going to be broken into those two branches. So you got Congress made up of a House of Representatives and the Senate, and then you have the judicial, which is guided by the Supreme Court, who, by the way, made a lot of decisions today that could be talked about at another time.
And those people living in Cincinnati today, since we broadcast very much into Ohio, Cincinnatus played a big part in all this, right?
Well, yeah, the way back, the Roman emperor named Cincinnatus, he came to power, had to take care of things, and then he went back home. And I learned this from the reenactor at Williamsburg, George Wythe, and he talked about virtue and Cincinnatus having that virtue not to rule with lifelong authority. Take care of the job, go home. Well, that's what George Washington did, didn't he? He could have been king. We could have gone from King George III to King George Washington. But he said after the second term, all right, I'm going home. I'm going back to Mount Vernon. I'm going to farm. And he said, it's all up. The rest of you guys keep on going. What a virtue. I don't have to stay in power.
Right. The humility of what he did. And again, you can see so much in leadership that he had in his prayer.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you haven't seen the picture of George Washington's prayer or heard the stories of how he was miraculously saved by God through, amazing things that were evident in his life, that that God was with him as a result of so many different things. So you got just a few minutes here to call in with your insight into what we're talking about today, this 250th anniversary from a biblical perspective.
I'm just itching to tell what that motto is, Robbie.
866-348-7884. And when I think about it, my family history being clear back into the Adirondacks part of New York and that area, that the French and Indian War was absolutely gigantic in what happened, as God set this out. He trained us how to fight in that war. And unfortunately, a lot of my relatives, were killed in those wars with the Indians in those days. And, the miraculous stories of how God protected certain ones of my relatives through marches through the snow and things like this. But again, based on their faith and their love of God. And again, at that point in time, the Indians were not exactly lovers of God. And so it was an interesting, from that particular point of the battle that was going on that we don't necessarily think about unless you study history, as Buxman talked about.
Yeah. Well, as Buxman talked about stories when you were growing up and going to school, I learned about George Washington from the French and Indian War.
Right.
And he was shot 4 times, but not killed. Horses dry. I can still hear the teacher talking about those horses that were shot, and yet he survived. God had a plan for that man.
Right, and that's what I meant. Yeah. That war was instrumental in making George Washington who he was, and somebody that wouldn't essentially give up when it looked like there was no chance in the war.
Yeah. So that leads to the motto.
It does. And I think we ought to spill the beans, Doc. I'm shocked that nobody called in at 866-348-7884, but do you want to give a bigger hint? Like it might be on our money.
It's on our money, and it's been on our money. The coins. It's been on there since 1864, and then it was in the 1950s, 1953, I think, that it got put on our currency, and it's in God we trust. That's the motto. But that motto is found in the 4th stanza of our national anthem.
The poem that Francis Scott Key wrote.
Yeah. And he writes that as he is beside a doctor on this ship, and the doctor has been praying all night. He's been praying for our country. And so that inspires him to then write these words, in God we trust. So when he saw that flag flying, it's because he knew we were trusted in God. How about that?
Right. And if you want a real treat and you to read all the stanzas of that poem, there's a lot in that is not in the song about what apparently was going on that night and what he experienced, that clearly led to, what we will sing, hopefully, a few times between now and the 4th of July.
I think we
and
will
the celebrations that you get a chance to take part in. And, as you take some of that, it's amazing to me the wisdom that God gave our forefathers. But I think it came out of their humility and out of their poor spirits, from a standpoint of, right? And like you said, Doc, that as we look at that now at Micah
6:8,
6:8, we'd love justice, but man, to walk humbly with your God in seeking His face is 2 Chronicles 7:14 are things that really I'm taking away from the show. Going, this is precious stuff, man.
Yeah. And as we look at where we're at, we are not perfect. And I like our Constitution component where it speaks of in order to form a more perfect.
Oh, that's right. I was supposed to ask you.
Yeah.
If you could rewrite the Constitution, one word.
Declaration of Independence.
If you could rewrite the Declaration of Independence, what word would you change?
Well, the Declaration of Independence is going to say that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of, and it says happiness. Well, I think I'd rather have the word, quite frankly, the pursuit of righteousness. And I would love for one of our major verses to be, as we go forward into the 251st year, Proverbs 21:21. He who pursues righteousness and love, not just righteousness, and love, finds life, prosperity, and honor. And so as we move forward, if I was preaching this Sunday, I'd be preaching Proverbs 21:21. How to move our nation forward.
Well, the fascinating thing about what you just said, that the word that is usually translated happy in the Old Testament is the word that begins the first psalm, right? Blessed,
yep.
Which could be translated happy.
Mm-hmm.
And you know that the root of that word in Hebrew says to move forward.
Well, there you
go. To take
a
step. So the first step, right? It's fascinating to me that often the first step with God, right? It's a change, like that all of a sudden you were walking one way, now you begin to walk with God, and therein lies the opportunity
to walk
as it
humbly
says, right,
with the Lord. Oh wow, Robbie. We got to get Micah 6:8 revived in our nation to go with Proverbs 21:21.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
Well, and you know why I would love righteousness? It's a verse that is not mentioned a lot these days, but needs to be revived also, is Proverbs 14:34. Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is is a disgrace to any people.
And that is
righteousness.
You're right.
We need George Whitefield preaching again. You must be born again. And we need Jonathan Edwards' message, Deuteronomy 32:35. Do you know that one?
No.
Vengeance is mine and recompense. Their foot shall slip in due time, for the day of their calamity is at hand, and the things to come hastens upon them. He preached a message, sinners in the hands of an angry God. So while we had George Whitefield preaching, we got Jonathan Edwards preaching and calling Americans, you've got to put God first.
Wonderful opportunity we have going into this weekend to not just celebrate, but celebrate what God's done and bring that into the conversation. Maybe a verse or two, something you got from this show or something somebody else shared. Again, if we can take that first step with God, blessed are you. We'll be back tomorrow with Peter Rosenberger.